Hi Nose Creek, welcome to week 2 of our book contest. Our draw is going to take place later this afternoon. It was so neat to see a lot of you yesterday on our staff parade. Great way to celebrate school spirit at Nose Creek, even though we're not together at this time. Hopefully that'll change sooner than later. We had our Groovy Joe winners from last week. They were Avelina in 3C, Riley in 4T, and Rylan in 1G. So congratulations to those winners last week. This week we'll choose 3 more. You always have to have your entries in before you catch this video, which comes on air 11 o'clock on Fridays. So if your entries are in, we're choosing 3 lucky winners, Chapters Indigo gift cards, and they'll be emailed to you this evening by 5 o'clock. After you review the clues throughout the week, enter by using the Google entry form, and the winners will be selected randomly each week. So remember, check it out each and every day and get your entries in. If you look up here, I'm going to review the clues for the week. So here they are. Monday's clue. This week we are looking for a character from one of Robert Munch's funny stories. Tuesday's clue. This week's character was looking forward to a new baby brother. Wednesday's clue. In this story you will find an alligator, a seal, and a gorilla baby. Yesterday's clue. Our character found her baby brother in a gorilla cage. What's the name of this character? So if you've guessed Kristen, you guessed correctly, which means you're eligible to win one of 3 gift cards. So stay tuned, check your email tonight by 5, and we'll announce the winners next week. Now it's time for our story, Alligator Baby by Robert Munch. Robert Munch has written more than 54 stories so far in his career. He's very famous. We have many of them in the Nose Creek Library, and you can find a lot of them online. And certainly, if you win, you can order one with your Chapters gift card. Alligator Baby, here we go. One night, Kristen's mother woke up and yelled, "A baby, a baby, I'm having a baby." Kristen's father jumped up and zoomed around the room, got dressed, and grabbed Kristen's mother by the hand. They ran downstairs to the car and drove off really fast. Vroom! Unfortunately, they got lost. They didn't go to the hospital. They went to the zoo. But it was okay. Kristen's mother had a lovely baby. Then they drove home and knocked on the front door. Blam, 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 blam. Kristen opened the door, and there was her mother, holding something all wrapped up. "Kristen," she said, "would you like to see your new baby brother?" "Oh yes," said Kristen. So Kristen lifted up the bottom of the blanket. She saw a long green tail and said, "That's not a people tail." Kristen lifted up the middle of the blanket, saw a green claw and said, "That's not a people claw." Kristen lifted up the top of the blanket, saw a long green face with lots of teeth and said, "That's not a people face. This is not my baby brother." "Now, Kristen," said her mother, "don't be jealous." Just then, the baby reached up and bit Kristen's mother on the nose. She yelled, "Ow!" Then the baby reached up and bit her father on the nose. He yelled, "Ow!" "That's not a people baby," said Kristen. "That's an alligator baby." "Goodness," said her mother, "we've got the wrong baby." So Kristen put the alligator baby in the fish tank, and her mother and father drove back to the zoo. They came back in an hour and knocked on the door. Blam, 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 blam. Kristen opened the door, and her mother said, "Would you like to see your new baby brother?" "Oh yes," said Kristen. Kristen lifted up the bottom of the blanket, saw a fishy tail, and said, "That's not a people tail." Kristen lifted up the middle of the blanket and saw a flipper and said, "That's not a people flipper." Kristen lifted up the top of the blanket, saw a face with whiskers and said, "That's not a people face. This is not my baby brother." "Oh, now, Kristen," said her mother, "don't be jealous." Just then the people baby reached up with the flipper and flapped her father's face. Whap, 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 whap. He yelled, "Ow! It's a seal baby. We got the wrong baby." So Kristen put the seal baby in the bathtub, and her mother and father drove back to the zoo. They came back in an hour, and they knocked on the door. Blam, 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 blam. They said, "Kristen, would you like to see your new baby brother?" "Oh yes," said Kristen. She lifted up the bottom of the blanket, saw a very hairy leg, and said, "That's not a people leg." She lifted up the middle of the blanket and saw a very hairy arm and said, "That's not a people arm." She lifted up the top of the blanket, saw a very hairy face and said, "That's not a people face. This is not my baby brother." "Now, Kristen," said her mother, "don't be jealous." Then the baby reached up with its feet and grabbed her mother's ear and her father's ear, and they both yelled, "Ow! It's a gorilla baby. We got the wrong baby." "Oh, let me do it," said Kristen. So her mother and father put the gorilla baby on the chandelier in the living room, and Kristen went off to the zoo on her bicycle. First, Kristen looked in the snake cage. No people babies. Then Kristen looked in the wombat cage. No people babies. Then Kristen looked in the elephant cage. Still no people babies. Then she stopped and listened. From far away she heard, "Wah, wah, wah, wah." "That's more like it," said Kristen. She followed the sound. It was coming from the gorilla cage. Kristen looked at the mummy gorilla and said, "Give me my baby brother." The gorilla jumped away and wouldn't give the baby back at all. Then the people baby reached up and bit the gorilla on the nose, and the gorilla yelled, "Ow!" and handed the baby to Kristen. Kristen jumped on her bicycle and pedaled home. Kristen knocked on the door. Blam, 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 blam. When her parents opened it, she said, "Would you like to see your new baby?" Kristen's mother lifted up the bottom of the blanket and said, "Look, people legs." She lifted up the middle of the blanket and said, "Look, people hands." She lifted up the top of the blanket and said, "Look, a people face." Kristen's mother picked up the baby and gave it a big hug. Her father took the baby and gave it a big hug. And her mother said, "Kristen, oh Kristen, you got the baby back. Good for you." "But what are we going to do with all these other babies?" yelled Kristen's father. "There's a seal baby in the bathtub, an alligator baby in the fish tank, and a gorilla baby hanging from the chandelier. We should take them back to the zoo." But Kristen looked out the window and said, "I don't think we'll have to do anything at all." And everything was okay until Kristen's mother had twins. Hope you enjoyed that story. That's Alligator Baby by Robert Munsch. Kristen, again, was the character we were looking for. And if you've guessed it, check your email tonight. 3 lucky winners. Thank you, boys and girls. Oh, by the way, speaking of babies, there's a new addition to Mr. Mac's family. Would you like to see the baby? I'm going to show you now. So here's my baby. Let me check it out. Wait a second. That's not a people tail. That's not people paws. That's not a people face. What are you doing in my Haagen-Dazs ice cream?